Dr. Dani Rabwin with ReadyVetGo, the podcast, and I am so excited for our guest today. This guest has a really amazing story and has had such a wonderful journey in veterinary medicine. I'm super excited to welcome Phil Snow. Thank you so much for being here, Phil.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you because you've experienced so many things in veterinary medicine and you've had a really just kind of interesting journey in vet med. I certainly don't know all of the details, so I'm so excited to learn about that. And you're a technician,
Yes.
and I want to talk about the important role that technicians play with our audience, which is, you know, a lot of new veterinarians and vet students. So can you just start by just sharing with us a little bit about your background and how you got into veterinary medicine and maybe what you're doing now?
Yeah. So, I mean, I originally got into veterinary medicine because I was fresh out of the military and I moved to Laguna Beach, and simply because I didn't want to go back home to Massachusetts, where I was originally from. And I went to a vet hospital, and I was like, "Hey, I don't really know what I'm gonna do, but do you mind if I volunteer for a little bit while I look for a job?" And they're like, "You know, we'll pay you." And
That
that's
sounds
really
great.
where, yeah, it's where it all started. I mean, I was getting, I think at the time it was like $6 an hour
Yeah.
or something like that. But I immediately fell in love with it. I was with Dr. G and Dr. Hamill, and I saw a really, really cool surgery case, and I like kind of was hooked almost right away then at that point. Worked for a few years, working in the kennel, a little bit like in the treatment room, and then I had an opportunity to start working in the treatment room as more of a veterinary assistant type role. Lucky enough, Dr. G and Dr. Hamill paid for me to go to tech school then at that point.
Wow.
So I went to school, became registered, and as soon as I got licensed, it was very weird. I was like, God, man, I'm allowed to do all these things, and I feel like I had a really good opportunity to as well by having school ultimately paid for. So I was like, I kind of want to give back in some regard. So I asked if I could start teaching at the school that I was at, and they were like, "Sure, right, you can do some guest lectures." So I did that, and then working full time at the clinic, teaching part time, and then eventually transitioned out of the clinic and started working in, well, it was then VPI, so vet pet insurance. It's now nationwide, right? I worked as a senior trainer over there, continued to teach, did that for a couple years, and then ultimately had an opportunity to go on full-time teaching. And I did that as well as doing like the externship coordinator type stuff. And then inevitably we had an opportunity to start a school. And that's kind of where I'm at right now is we've started an alternate route veterinary technician school. We've got a couple campuses, one in Garden Grove and one in Lake Forest. And
Wow.
it's kind of full circle.
This is amazing. You summed all that up really fast.
Yeah.
What was the time frame from when you walked into that clinic and said, I'd like to volunteer, to now you're running a technician school?
Yeah,
What's the time
I mean,
frame?
it's almost embarrassing to say, but I mean, it's been a long time.
Well, I would expect
So
it to have been a long time.
It was 2001, I believe, 2002 when I first started. I got registered, I believe, in 2008.
Yeah.
And then I started teaching full time left the clinic in 2011, started teaching full time in 2015. And then we opened up our school in 2016, I believe.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I definitely want to hear more about the school.
Yeah.
I do just want to circle back to the very beginning, which is the military, which you
Yeah.
just briefly said, I started in the military. And
Yeah.
I'm just so interested to know how that experience influenced what you're doing now, how it shaped you, how has it helped you maybe as like the leader of an organization, leadership tools. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, right? And I think that you get all different types of, opinions out of there. And it was, it was tough, boot camp and all that kind of stuff. And I had a basic admin job. I was a personnel man, so we basically did administrative stuff like on base. But I really encourage any young male who's like kind of a little bit on the fence about what they're going to be doing with their lives to look into it, because I think it kind of forces you to grow up very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that if it wasn't for that, God knows where I would have ended up.
Right.
But I think that it gave me a good sense of pride, responsibility. There was a lot of really good things that came out of it. And while I obviously did not stay in it, I was always grateful for the experience. I think that was a really important part of my life that gave me some like discipline and things like that. So that was good.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You did say one little thing that piqued my curiosity is you said young males, and I'm just curious to know like why you said that. Obviously that, if that's your experience, and I don't mean to cause any,
Yeah. I mean, I've got 3 kids, and you kind of see this stuff, especially growing up. I have other friends that have older kids and stuff, and I don't know. I feel like there's this very delicate time for young men around that age of 16 to 18 to 20, somewhere around there, that they're making really big decisions that could impact their lives in very negative ways. And I feel like there's always this kind of crossroad that most men will go through around that time. And obviously the military is a good way to go, right? I feel like some of these guys have an opportunity to do this type of stuff, or it might end up with things like jail or other crazy things like that. So I think that some of these guys that are a little wild growing up, I think the military is a good thing. In fact, if you ask me personally, I like the idea of having, this would never go over well, but having people do like a couple of years and then go on to college or something like that.
Yeah, I've heard a similar thing. And what you're saying really resonates with me because I have an almost 19-year-old son, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's a dangerous decision, right? I'm like, oh my gosh.
Who is giving so much power to these people? Like when we handed over the car keys at 16, I'm like, whose wise idea was it to give a 16-year-old boy
I think about
keys to a car?
Yeah, 16. Yeah, it's terrifying.
It is. Well, it is interesting, and I'm glad that you shared that with us, how that kind of impacted you now, because I'm just always curious when people do take that path. We have a lot of mentors in the ReadyVetGo mentorship program, a handful of whom have been involved in the military as veterinarians or veterinary professionals, and they bring just kind of a different level of just organization and leadership and different tools that they learned from that experience. So I just think that is, a really interesting part of your journey.
Yeah. The doctor I worked for was he was in the Army as a vet, and then of course he came out and started his practice. So it was kind of cool. Him and I had a bit of a connection in that regard. So that was nice.
So what got you into the teaching path? You got your RVT, and then pretty shortly after, it sounded like you were like, let me see if I can do some teaching. Was that something you had always thought about, or how did you just
Not really. I hate public speaking. Right? Like that was never anything that was never on my radar. I'm sure if you talk to any of my teachers and asked them where Phil Snow would be, I doubt teaching would be at the top of their list.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It was just I had this overwhelming feeling that I had to do something because I had that school paid for it, right? And I was like, how am I going to give back to this community that's helped me out so much? And I was just like, well, I obviously know this stuff, especially coming right out of school. There's so many things I've forgotten, but at the time, stuff is all fresh in your mind.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, let me pick a couple topics, and it just worked out. I started out doing really the beginner programs, and that was fairly easy. And then just kind of worked my way up to some more advanced topics, and then eventually, we're teaching full time.
And this was all for technicians. You're teaching at a technician school?
Yes, yeah. There is a program that is like it's like an entry program for like what we would consider like low level assistants or like kennel staff, right? Something that initially like breaks down that barrier. I think a lot of vets, they have these postings, right? Or they ask for people that are entry level, that are young, that are trying to work in the kennel, but there's always that element that they want some experience. And that was what that program afforded. It was a short program. They also had an internship with local animal hospitals. So I think that vets that at least saw that were like, okay, at least this person has some experience, and at least they've been in the back of an animal hospital. And I think that shock that a lot of people get when they first go into animal hospitals is worn off, and I think that they were more willing to take a stab at them, for entry level positions.
Right. Yeah. So you mentioned that part of the desire to go into teaching was because you felt like you had been given this really wonderful gift from Dr. G and Dr. Hamill, paying for you to go to technician school.
Yeah.
We talk a lot on this podcast about culture and creating positive practice culture, and I know that Dr. Hamill and Dr. G created a really amazing culture in that clinic.
Yeah.
Was that part of it. How do you feel that played into just the whole culture of the experience of that clinic?
Well, the culture of the clinic was awesome, right? There was a lot of really good opportunities for teaching and cultivating some of these young professionals that they took really good advantage of,
Mm,
which is something that now where being at the position that I'm in, I hear is not very common. And I think a lot of people
yeah.
have a really difficult time finding clinics or mentors or anything like that that will actually help them once they have started out in this career. So that culture was awesome for anybody that was really involved in it, and there was some really great things that we would do that the doctors would help us that really kind of not like we're hand holding, but we're almost pulling us to do our own types of research and
Yeah.
figure things out. And were very encouraging, and that was like really what stuck with me working
Mm,
there was being able to have some freedom, right? Obviously with supervision and whatnot, but having that freedom, and then also having that education that they provided to as well. And I think it really kind of helped me blossom as well as I think a lot of the other staff too.
yeah, it sounds like such a gift. And like, why don't we do that more often? You know, I hear
Yeah,
they were like empowering you to become like a self directed learner. You
yeah,
could do that within the safety of that environment. You know, they did give you a little bit of freedom to
yeah,
explore the things that you were interested in.
yeah,
And what an awesome way to grow as a technician. You
yeah.
know, you go to school, you have all of this knowledge, and then you can really share that and develop programs or, you know, make change happen within your clinic.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, it was really cool the way that like you said, the self-directed stuff like that was really, really, really helpful. Something would come in, and they would have us be a part of the diagnosis, right?
Mm,
And so that was, I think you learn so much better that way, right? There's a lot of stuff that I learned obviously in school, but when I think back at some of those things that I was able to put on actual cases, like those things stuck with me a lot more
yeah.
than what I read in a textbook. Yeah.
This is so interesting. You know, we work with so many new veterinarians,
Yeah.
and sometimes part of the struggle of the transition from school into practice is being a leader and connecting with the team. And often there are differences where experienced technicians might have been in the practice for a long time. There might be even a generational difference between the seasoned technician
Sure.
and the new grad. But what I hear from technicians is what I hear from you, which is like you like to be part of talking about that case, weighing in on what the diagnosis might be. Have you had experiences with new veterinarians where they've come into a clinic, or do you have advice for new grads on connecting with technicians to engage in those types of discussions? Because technicians want to be lifelong learners too,
Yes.
just as much as the vets do.
Yeah. I think like any new vet, when we've had several of them that came in. One of them was Dr. Brower. Her and I started out in the kennel together, which was
Mm,
really a cool story. And then she went over to Ohio State and then came back, and then she was a vet over there for a long time too as well. And we've had a couple other. Dr. Alcala was another one. So we've had some vets that came in that were fresh out of school, and then of course got into the clinic. I think that I like the idea of the new vets, the new grads, and the technicians having a really good relationship because, at least in my experience, the technicians that have been there for a while kind of will guide them on the way things are really done in the clinic
yeah.
without them having to go to the senior vets or to the owners or anything like that. And I think that they can really kind of lean on them
Yes.
to find out a lot about policies, protocols, and all that type of stuff. Um, I don't know. I was always very reluctant about like giving any advice or anything like that with any of the vets because they were the vets, you know what I mean?
Right.
But as far as the way things were done in the hospital, I think that that was a very important thing that I could afford them when they would originally start. So that was, I think that would be my biggest thing is to, buddy up with those technicians, the ones
Yeah.
that have been there for a while.
Yes, buddy up with them. It is so important. I mean, they are a
Yeah.
lifeline,
Yeah.
you know, for things like what you're talking about, procedures and
Yeah.
protocols. And also not necessarily to give advice, because like you said, you have to be, sort of mindful. It's a
Yeah.
delicate balance you might
Yes.
walk, because you have so much experience and
Right.
probably want to give some advice.
Yeah.
I've had really skilled technicians ask me questions and say, I haven't seen it done that way.
Yeah.
Why did you choose that?
Yeah.
And I think, for new grads, there's a little bit of like, humility in saying, maybe my way isn't being questioned. Maybe the technician really either wants to learn, or maybe the way you're doing it really is kind of different
Yeah.
than how some of the other doctors do things. And we can learn a lot from you.
I love the way that you put that, right? So when I talk to the students, I'm like, hey, listen, this is, whatever we're talking about. Let's say we're talking about like medication, or in pharmacology, we're talking about dosing or something like that. And maybe they see something that might be a mistake, right?
Yeah.
I tell these students, do not go up to these doctors and be like, hey, look at this, right? This is clearly a mistake, because I've done that before.
Yeah.
And the doctor proceeded to call me an idiot.
Oh, no.
And this is why, I mean, jokingly, right? And then proceeded to tell me why these things were the way that they were.
Yeah.
So I always tell the technicians that if there's something that looks odd, you don't want to just let it go, because it very well could be a mistake.
Yes.
Which is, not incredibly common, but it could be. But use it as an opportunity to see if the vet can teach you why these things are different, and be like, hey, this isn't like a typical dose that we would normally give. I was just curious as to why it's like this. Is it because of X, Y, or Z? And then I think the
Yes.
presentation is key.
It
on that.
is.
Yeah.
And I love that that's part of the training. You're not just teaching pharmacology, you're teaching the communication with your team around pharmacology,
Yes.
which is kind of a learned skill.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of nuance, and there's some really, kind of smart ways to do it. And so I think I love that you're out there doing that. And not everybody's going to do it in the
Yeah.
most skilled way. We're going to make mistakes.
Yeah, right.
Like you said, you presented something one way that wasn't received
Yeah,
very well
no,
once.
yeah.
And I've probably done the same thing. It's not
Yeah.
going to be perfect, but if you have that kind of open communication with your team,
Yeah.
like I count on my team. If I'm going to, make a mistake or do a miscalculation, I need my team to correct me. We just had a change in the concentration of our buprenorphine. It went from 0.6 mg per mil to 0.3.
Yeah.
So the dose that I presented in milliliters was wrong.
Right.
And if the tech hadn't come to me, and questioned it, I was like, why is the dosing off?
Yeah.
Well, the strength had changed.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. I mean, we
Yeah.
count on our technicians to help us with those things.
Yeah. I think it's very important for that. I think it's one of those fail safes, but I think that people, we're all part of the same team,
Yeah.
right? I never want to embarrass anyone
Yeah.
or make them think that they're difficult to work with, or that they can't come to me for something, right? Like it's that presentation is really big.
Yeah. So you didn't expect to go into teaching, but there you find yourself in teaching.
Yeah.
And now you're running a technician's school. And are you the owner of this school?
Yeah, it's me and a partner.
Okay.
So we're both owners of it, but yeah, it's a partnership. But with 2 campuses, we got one in Lake Forest, one in Garden Grove.
Wow. So was entrepreneurial journey, like was being an entrepreneur part of your vision or goal for yourself, or like how did that happen, the move from teaching into ownership of a school?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I think a lot of people think about owning a business, and that was always in the back of my mind. The fact that it was still involved in veterinary medicine was a huge plus, right? Obviously, not being a vet, really kind of limits our ability to own practices. Not that we can't, right? But obviously it's built around a veterinarian, and so it's thinking about starting one yourself. You can imagine quite a daunting task.
Yes.
Right? So the fact that I was still able to stay in veterinary medicine was very key for me.
Yeah.
But I was always thought about it. It's always nice there's a lot of positives you get with owning a business, right? There's you're the end all be all, right? There's a lot of really good things that are afforded, but you're also a business owner, so there's a lot of really crazy things that come along with it.
Yes.
Right? But I enjoy it, and I'm always really glad that I took that step. It was difficult, right? I think it's very scary to put everything on the line and then hope that it works out.
Right.
But when it does, it's a really great thing.
Yeah, I bet. So you've worn like many different hats,
Yeah.
From this whole journey. When you talk to young people who say they want to go into veterinary medicine, we frequently hear, I want to be a vet.
Yeah.
there are a million other ways that we can be in this profession without being a veterinarian, and you have sort of, worn many of those hats and had
Yeah.
many roles in vet med. Who are you seeing coming into the technician program? What do you say to people who are, just singularly focused on one path, either as a vet or a tech?
Yeah.
What opportunities are out there, and how do you talk about that with people?
That's a really good point. So we obviously it's mostly young people that are coming through, right?
Mhm.
I would say average is 18 to 22 or something like that.
Mhm.
They're usually pretty young. Usually hell bent on working in the clinic, which is I think why we all get involved in this field in the first place. But one thing that we try to do is if it's my class, I try to always kind of add all the different avenues that I've taken, and that it's not going to be you are in the clinic for the rest of your life. If you choose, there are a lot of different areas for them to become still within the veterinary community, but out of the clinic. There's research and education, and I mean, there's rep positions, there's insurance, there's all different
Yeah.
types of things that are out there. There's county jobs and city jobs and all kinds of stuff. I really try to highlight that in the program, either with the kids that I'm teaching, or if I ever go in and talk to them about an additional class, I'll go in and talk to them about some of these opportunities. But it's really unfortunate. We do see a lot of really good people that would be that would obviously make great employees or whatever in the veterinary industry leave because they feel like the clinic is the only thing that's there for them,
Mhm.
and then they're gone. They're
Yeah.
a realtor, or God knows what else, God knows what else they're
Well,
doing.
yeah.
But it's an unfortunate thing. So I'm a part of the California RVT Association on the board there, and that's one of our things is trying to keep people in the veterinary profession and trying to
Mhm.
make sure that everyone understands that there is a lot of opportunity out there aside from the clinic. And the technician burnout rate is it's I've heard all different things from 7 to 10 years or something like that.
Wow.
So
Meaning
that's
7 to 10 years in the profession and
Mhm.
then gone.
And
Okay.
and we want to keep understanding that. Obviously, we want to make clinic life better, but if they are out of the clinic, we want to keep them in the veterinary profession. Right?
Yeah.
And keep these really great individuals. And we can probably see it, right? Some of these older RVTs are usually on circuit speaking or
Right.
all kinds of stuff like that. So
Well, it's a hard job. I mean, it's very
Yeah.
physical, and emotional,
Yeah.
and you work hard, and the pay isn't always as high as
Yeah.
it should be. And so I didn't know this about you and being on the board of the Technician Association. So what else does this association do? Are you advocates for the technicians?
Yeah, so we're like a 501c6, so we're basically a lobbying nonprofit, right? So anything and everything that has to do with RVTs, especially when it comes into legislation and things like that, we get involved in. So we have a lady, Nancy, who goes in and she's a part of the California Vet Medical Board meetings and everything, and she's really our voice at the meetings. But any big changes, any big any big laws or regulation is coming in the pipeline, we try to make sure that we voice our opinion and try to get our base rallied behind us, right? And it's basically if it's good for the registered veterinary technicians, right, or at least we feel it is, it's something that
Yeah.
we'll pursue.
Yeah. You're so busy.
I know.
I'm like, I know you have 3 kids
Yeah.
and a wife, and
I
you run
know.
this job, and you're on the board, and
It's crazy.
is it like fulfilling? You get
Yeah.
joy out of this?
Yeah,
Is it
I really
still
do.
part of wanting to give back? Do you still feel like you owe something because of Dr. Hamill and Dr. G?
Yeah, it's definitely I like to stay busy and I like challenges, right? And so I think that is always something that I'm always looking for the next kind of thing that I can help out with, right? And I don't know, it's just always been like that. I've always been a person that's worked 2 jobs or have worked and gone to school or something like that. So I just stay busy.
Yeah, and there's so many opportunities within your profession
Yeah.
where you can stay busy.
Yeah.
And it all overlaps, and one probably feeds the other.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the things that you learn working with all the tech students influences how you are on the board and
Sure.
vice versa, and all
Yeah.
this experience that you bring.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about mentorship because,
Sure.
this is such a hot topic. And when veterinarians are looking for their first job, mentorship is usually the number one thing that they're looking for. I am asked time and again when we are going to have a ReadyVetGo
Yeah.
because the technicians want something like that.
Yeah.
Does this come up in your teaching? How do you advise registered technicians when they leave your program? How are they going to get their own mentorship? What exists for them? How do you talk to them about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So since we're alternate route, we have these people that are currently working in the animal hospitals while they're going to school, right? So hopefully they've been mentored as this has been going on. Part of the alternate route is that they are buddied up with a vet and they are mentoring them as well. So the lack of schooling that they get is supposed to be made up with hands-on components with the vet. So hopefully they have had good mentors, right? Um, that is one aspect. The other aspect to that though is I tell them, I'm like, look, once you're licensed, you need to be a mentor, right? You need to remember but what you felt like when you
Yes.
first got into this, and make sure that you give back, right? This vet has taken a lot of their time to help you advance. You need to take some of your time to help other people advance as well. So I hope I plant that seed, but I'll tell you, we do internships. We get these students that they come through the program. They're like, oh, the vet doesn't let me do this. I'm not doing this at work. Nobody's teaching me this. And then they get over it, right? And they get over that hump, and then they are doing it. And then I'll reach out to them and be like, hey, you want to take an intern? They're like, nah.
Oh.
Nah, I don't think so.
Oh no, you're like, remember how you felt?
Right. So it's hard. I really do appreciate trying to find these mentors that are out there, because it's one of the big complaints that you hear, across the board is,
Yes.
they're not letting me, or they're not teaching me. Like, those are really big complaints.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think people aren't letting or aren't teaching?
I think you need patience, right? And I think there's a tendency to want to just do your job and go home and not have to deal with anything that you don't have to deal with. So if you get some new people in there, you got to go back several stages of your career, right, and try to bring them back up with you. But it's incredibly important, right? It's if you don't do that, you are going to be one of the few people that are able to do something in the clinic, which isn't a good thing, right?
Yeah.
You want to make sure that everyone can do stuff,
Yes.
and everyone can contribute. Otherwise, you're putting yourself in a bad position. But it's yeah. We definitely would like to see that a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, I do love that that's part of what you are educating them about is once you have that degree, now it's time to start thinking about yourself in the role of a mentor. I think a lot of people, once they get their degree, that is obviously we still need to have our own mentors.
Yeah.
But there's no age at which you can start to become a mentor for others and really empowering them. Once you have this license, now you can start giving back too. I think that's really empowering to hear.
Yeah. Hopefully they do it. I don't know if they do.
Well, it's hard. I know there was this feeling among veterinarians that, in the old days, we mentored because the person who hired us hopefully mentored us, and it's our job to kind of give back. But things have changed a lot. Most people don't go and just work now for an independent practitioner who is going to then sell to the next associate in line. It's changing so much. And so this idea somehow that we're supposed to become mentors simply because it's the right thing to do when we have the pressures on us to, see all the patients and produce all the things and then train the RVTs that are coming through. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And, so, I don't know what the motivating factor is. I know in veterinary medicine, we're talking about compensating the veterinarians for their role in mentorship. I don't know what that would look like for technicians, or if you have thoughts on that.
It really depends, I think. I do think that if you have people, and this is just like on a clinic basis, if you have an RVT that's capable of training, I like the idea of giving them some compensation, right? Maybe it's a couple dollars more an hour or whatever it might be, and then having them be responsible for the mentoring of new people or implementing a training program or something like that is going to make sure that people that are either new grads or new hires continue to hit certain strides and and really kind of level up as they continue to go on. And so I think the compensation is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Because at least it's not somebody that's getting paid and they don't feel like they're doing extra, but they're not getting compensated for it. So
Right.
so I like that idea,
Yeah.
or just having them be like the training technician or whatever. it might be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for a lot of people that, adds a lot of like satisfaction and joy and
Yeah.
gives you a whole different perspective on your career, similar
Yeah.
to what you did.
Yeah. I mean, if a vet asks you that stuff, I mean, it's got to be an honor, right?
Right.
That they think that you are at a place to where you can train other people. So
Yeah.
that's a good thing.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned this like horrible number of 7 to 10 years
Yeah.
before leaving or burning out.
Yeah.
What other opportunities exist? You sort of touched on them. You mentioned some other things. You like briefly glossed over the stint you had in veterinary insurance.
Yeah.
So there's just so many opportunities.
Yeah.
So what type of conversations do you have with people, or what would you recommend for people who are thinking about what's the next step for me? I've been in RVT for 10 years. I'm thinking about doing something different, but I don't necessarily want to leave the profession.
Yeah, I think usually my first go-to is specialty, right? So
Mhm.
is there something that will keep you in the clinic, right? Do you have a profound interest in dentistry or
Yeah.
surgery or something like that? That's usually my
Yes.
first go-to. And if they do, I would say pursue that,
Yeah.
right? And then go out and get your specialty designation. And I think there a lot is going to open up for them after that, right? I think being
Right.
licensed is very important. I think there's a lot of doors that open up for you. But a specialty definitely opens up more, right? So
Yes.
I think that's usually the first place that I go. Out here, being in Southern California, I usually point them over to things like insurance, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of really cool jobs that pet insurance has. They could work in claims. They could do what I did, like being a senior trainer, or they could work in underwriting. There's a lot of really cool stuff. Then you work with really cool people. You work with other technicians, other vets,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an office job, right? So
Right.
if you're ready to get out of that clinic, that's definitely an opportunity. So I usually say, hey, is that something you're interested in? If they're very outgoing, rep positions I think are pretty important for some of those people that need to be constantly on the go, or not going to be good in an office, and are looking to get out of the clinic. So, and then of course, please come back and teach for me. Right? I would love, please. I mean,
What's the name of your school?
Yeah, OC Vet Assistant School. So I mean, if they are ever interested, like, we would love having people come in, teachers, guest teacher, like all that stuff. So I like.
So like
that's hard to get people to be like, yeah, I'm gonna come talk in front.
Really?
Of
Is that hard?
Yes. Yeah.
What do you need people to come talk about or come teach? I think people would be interested in that.
Yeah, I mean, we do, all the typical stuff you can imagine as a vet tech program, right? So we have very well-rounded technicians that are teachers, and that's one thing that I think that we're blessed with is like, we don't have any one type of technician. So like, I did general practice reproduction stuff, and then we have other instructors that work with equine and marine mammals and like shelter medicine and all kinds of stuff. So we have a pretty good, well-rounded staff,
Yeah.
right? But there's something. I know my students don't want to hear me just drone on for 4 semesters, right? Like if I can get a guest speaker in there that's way more advanced in surgery, then please, my God, like, come in and talk to these guys, and I'm sure they'll be happy to stop listening to Phil's stories, right?
Yeah. I wonder, like you had mentioned the technician specialization, is that a resource to tap into to come back? Do specialized technicians come back and teach or do guest lectures?
So we have had like a couple. We have one that's in the process of it right now. So she's on her way to the VTS for emergency critical care. So once she gets, I mean, she's already been teaching for a very long time. She'd kill me if I told you how long, but she's been teaching for a long time. And we're excited for her, so hopefully that ends up happening real soon. And it's something to. I don't think anything crazy changes,
Yeah.
right? She just now has a designation, something for us to to make sure that we highlight.
Right. So can you talk more about the VTS? I think that was the first thing you said when I said, what else could technicians do when they're looking for something different?
Yeah.
And yet I don't know that many VTS technicians.
Yeah.
What what advantages open up for them? Does the pay go up? Do they have more job opportunities? Are clinics valuing the VTS degree enough to the point where they're going to be hiring them? Can you just speak more to that?
Yes. So the VTS, I mean, there's so many opportunities that are out there for them as far as like the specialty designations, right? We definitely see a pretty strong increase in pay as well. One of the really cool things about the VTS is a lot of these guys end up going in and doing talks or going on into conferences.
Mm-hmm.
You'll probably notice the conferences that you've been to when you have RVT speaking, for the most part, they're VTSs, right?
Yeah.
Usually.
Yes.
So that type of stuff opens up for them.
Yes.
I think that the education opens up a lot for them too. These are people that are considered to be, experts as far as veterinary technicians are concerned in that field, authoring textbooks, right, and sitting on boards, right. There is a lot of advanced opportunity that comes out there.
Yeah.
So we for sure see advance in pay. We definitely, I mean, there's a problem with getting these VTSs though. It's like you almost have to be working at a specialist in order to become a VTS. Like there are some opportunities for large animal or general practice and things of that sort, but if you wanted to do anesthesia, you should, hopefully you're in a specialty clinic that does really advanced anesthesia or surgery. You got to be an advanced component.
Yeah, in order to learn what you need to learn to get
Yes.
that advanced degree.
Yep. And there was some talk for a while there about there being a VTS for educators, which I don't know. I think some people would think that would be for that, but I'm not. Like I kind of feel like the VTSs are more like terminal endings for the technicians as far as like what do you consider like a terminal degree. I think as far as education, you can go out and you can get masters and doctorates in education and all that stuff. So like
there was discussion around having a VTS specifically for educators, so you would be a VTS.
Yeah, you potentially could go for it, but again, I think that there are other avenues for education for that you could get terminal degrees in.
I see. Yeah. And like you said, so many of the VTS technicians are out there doing education and speaking. We do a CE webinar series, a medical series for early career vets, and next month is Mary Berg, if you know her.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so we have Mary coming to speak about dentistry because she's the VTS dental queen.
She is the queen of dentistry.
Yeah, and I'm like,
absolutely.
I learned everything I know about dentistry from a technician, so I need you to come and speak to the new veterinarians about dentistry.
Yeah, exactly, right. So that type of stuff opens up for them. So it's pretty cool.
Exactly, yeah, and I'm glad that we can kind of share this because I think this is an under-discussed area, especially in light of, I hate to even bring it up, but the mid-level practitioner debacle that is so, I mean, I just like to poke the bear a little bit and find out what everybody thinks about it because I think it's such an interesting topic. But, I think this does come into play when we talk about that mid-level degree.
That'll be really interesting. I mean, it's Colorado, right? Yeah. So we'll kind of see. I don't even know how the heck that thing is going. Like, I know that it passed, but I don't know who's running it. I don't know if it's Colorado State or
I don't really know.
Or who's
So
gonna run with it.
is that not something that you guys on the board are talking about? Do you not feel like there's no sense of urgency that California needs to be discussing this right now?
Well, yes, there is, right? So the board definitely came out with a statement that, whether they were for or against it, and a lot of them, quite frankly, are not for it. And I mean, I know this is like a hot button issue, but like I think it's a good idea. I do think that there is some value in having more advanced people that are able to take care of more advanced things. I think the problem that you run into is that you are going to have these people have certain levels of responsibility that may get to like a fairly dangerous level, and then who's responsible? Is the mid-level practitioner going to be responsible? Or do they have their own insurance, or is this all going to fall on the vet?
Yeah.
And I think that's where you're going to run into some really big issues.
I do too.
Yeah.
I have to say I'm quite surprised to hear your stance coming from your role as an RVT.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of like, having somebody that is in there that could, the dog's shaking its ears. Right? They could come in there and they could look at the ears and be like, do an ear cytology and send it home with ear meds, right? Or, it's itching, or it's, just real basic things that I maybe some of the vets don't even want to see, right? They want to see more interesting stuff. So I think there's some value in there. Maybe you could also go into like some of these lower socioeconomic areas and help out in that regard.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is quite the uphill battle, and I'm glad I don't have to be a part of it. I can just sit over here in my
Yeah.
chair and have an opinion.
Right, exactly. Easy for you to just sit there and talk about it.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Yeah, I bet. So one thing that I always ask my veterinarian guests to do that I'm going to ask you to that I didn't prepare you for, so I'm sorry. I find that new veterinarians really are afraid of making mistakes and just
Mhm.
do everything they can to avoid making them, when really what I want them to know is you're going to make a mistake. Here's what you do to help get through that mistake. And I am confident that new technicians are concerned about that too. Nobody wants to make a mistake. And there's a lot of value in hearing from people who are in your position and my position, sharing what our mistakes were. So if you would really play along with me and dig deep and share
Some of the bad mistakes
a
I've made.
mistake you made as an RVT.
Oh man, I know it already, right?
Yeah.
And I tell my students this is, and so I'm an RVT at this point, right? And I'm also working with another RVT, and we have a dog that came in for a luxating patella, and so, you just get complacent, and we knock the dog out, start prepping it, and we're not paying attention,
Yeah.
and we are shaving the leg, and we're talking. We've got the animal all hooked up and everything. You're kind of, after a while, you're listening to everything, right? And then the doctor comes in, and he was like, "What are you guys doing?" And we're like, "We're shaving your luxating patella and getting it ready." And he was like, "It's the right leg." And I was like, "Yeah, it is the right leg." like thinking like it's the right one, not left or right. And it was the left leg that we were shaving.
Oh, no.
And I was like, "Oh my God." So we had, and if you've ever prepped for a luxating patella, it's like, it's like the hip to the toes.
Yes.
And so here now, and we're done shaving, by the way, right?
You're patting yourself on the back. It's all perfectly smooth.
Yep. And then so now we have to go and flip a dog and shave the whole other side.
Yes.
So now it looks like this, baboon, right? It's completely shaved in the back end. And so that was a horrible, horrible mistake that I made. I'm very thankful that it did not get to the point where we actually did surgery on it, right? Thank God the vet
Yeah.
saw that right out the gate. And he knew it. It was crazy. He walked in and knew it right out. And he was like, "It's the wrong leg." So that could have been catastrophic. Now, I knew the person who we were doing the luxating patella, and the doctor was like, "You got to tell him." And
Okay.
so I was like, "All right, fine." And there was a part of me that was like, "I don't know. They don't know. Like, just tell them this is the way we shave
This
it."
is right. This is the protocol.
But, thank God, I had some better values than that. And I went up and I told them, I was like, "Look, we shaved the wrong leg. Didn't do, obviously, surgery on the wrong leg, but your dog has a weird haircut." And thank God I knew them. They thought it was funny, but it could have been just awful, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many things. That one mistake could have led to so many terrible things.
Yeah.
So I think about that often, and I'm not afraid to tell students about some of the mistakes that I made. I think it's important to highlight that we do make mistakes, and that it's important to take responsibility. And then if you do make it, hopefully it's not catastrophic, and that you take whatever you put into place whatever you need to never make that mistake again. Right? Like that's the biggest thing I try to teach these kids.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And I could just tell as you knew immediately, and it still is with you, that that feeling. I mean, I think we can all relate to that. When the doctor walked in, it was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And to think about where could that have gone if the doctor wasn't thinking, or what if they did start cutting, and we play these things over and over in our head, and you did it and I've done that, and I think the takeaway, like you said, of what can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen again is such an important lesson, and what a gift to give to your students to say, like, this is what I've done, and it sounds like you share other mistakes that you made. I think it's really important. Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in doing that. So I'd just love to know, kind of as we wrap up, sort of what's next. You've had this really incredible journey, and you said there's now 2 campuses. Is that what you said? There's 2 campuses open?
Yeah.
And so where are you going with this technician school? Where are you going with the board? It seems like there might be more ahead of you. Do you know what those things are?
Yeah, we're always looking for, how can we continue to advance, right? So things like Um, us being alternate route, I think that there is a lot of people that do not like the alternate route, right? I
Mm.
think that they want to go to
Like
2 year.
students who don't like the alternate route, or
The
who?
veterinary profession, right? So I think they
Ah.
want a lot more of the degree granting AVMA accredited type schools.
So can you just
Yeah.
like share then what is the difference? Like what is the objection to this alternate route?
Yeah.
Because perhaps I don't even know all of the details.
Yeah, so alternate route was something that came up. The board came up with this, that they were going to allow technicians to have a certain amount of education, and they have what is essentially a checklist, right? You have to have so many of these. It's like microbiology, math, chemistry, bio, stuff like that. And then you have to have a list of these different types of what we'll just call like nursing, anesthesia, pharmacology, and things like that that you've been sat in actual classroom for.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. And then you have a task list that's associated with the vet that says basically the vet is vouching for this person. So in lieu of the additional education, you basically are doing like hands-on, on-the-job training that has veterinary oversight, and then from a school too as well, right? So we obviously provide the education. We require all of our students who are in the program to be working in the animal hospital. So that's a big difference, right? And the AVMA, of course, is all school all the time, right? And they're degree granting. We're certificate, but ultimately it all funnels into that VTNE, which is our national exam.
Yeah.
And so whenever we get any prospective students, I'm very clear on I would never steer anyone away from a degree. I think that there's a ton of value in whatever degree it is that you go out and get. But we have a completely different demographic. We're going after people that are currently working in animal hospitals, who are looking to get licensed, who need to continue to work full time. Yeah. And so there's a very big difference in there. So I was kind of just leading into that, like we were looking into like AVMA accreditation, putting like, so then we would have both options, right? So we would have like an AVMA route and then also an alternate route. So the AVMA would be much more for really young kids, right? Like 18 coming out of high school. They're like, this is what I'm going to do. And then the alternate route would be more for the people that have been working in animal hospitals for any length of time and are looking to get licensed.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a big task.
That'll be crazy, right? You can imagine like accreditation and all that kind of stuff. It's quite a task. But we're looking into that, and so we'll see if that doesn't work out. We're always looking into the next things. But
well, having known you for approximately an hour, I'm not at all surprised to hear that you're going to tackle the big bear of the AVMA, or at least thinking about it. Or doing something like that. So. Yeah. Well, that is amazing, and I wish you luck, and I'm excited for whatever students get to come through your path.
Thank you.
Very glad I got to know you. Thank you so much for
it was nice
being
meeting you.
here.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming.